What if the exact thoughts you are using to manifest $1 million are the exact biological reason you're like statistically more likely to go bankrupt?
I mean, it sounds totally counterintuitive, right?
Hmm.
But the data on that is absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
When you bypass the physical mechanics of reality and rely entirely on magical thinking, well, the consequences aren't just neutral. They can actually be catastrophic.
I really want to hold on to that bankruptcy statistic
Yeah.
because we are definitely going to tear it apart short.
You have to.
But, it perfectly frames the massive, just incredibly ambitious mission we have for today's deep dive.
Yeah, it really does.
We are tackling a question submitted specifically for you, the listener. Like,
Yeah.
you want to know how you can achieve actual happiness, pull in good fortune, and, find real love by taking the intentionality, that raw desire of the law of attraction, but grafting it onto the rigid, predictive, cause and effect reality of determinism.
Which is wild because you're essentially asking how to build a working engine out of a paradox,
Right.
On one side, you have this very human desire to shape the future, the wish to attract good things. And then the other side, you have the cold, unyielding laws of physics that suggest, well, the future is already locked into a chain of prior causes.
It's like, how do those two things even coexist?
Exactly. The goal here is to figure out what you should actually be doing, like on a daily basis, to live a better life if you accept that determinism is real, but you still want to engineer your own luck.
And to do that, we have pulled together this incredibly diverse stack of sources for you.
Yeah, a really wide range today.
We're diving into the 19th century historical origins of the New Thought movement. So looking at the original texts from guys like Phineas Quimby and William Walker Atkinson.
The classics.
Right. And we are pairing that with modern psychological data, including that massive study from the British Psychological Society on the real-world dangers of manifestation.
Which is fascinating data, by the way.
Oh, it's mind-blowing. Then we are tearing into the actual neuroscience. So the physical mechanisms of the placebo effect, the recent discovery of lymphatic vessels in the brain, and how goal setting actually rewires your neural architecture.
And tying it all together is the philosophy, right? We are relying heavily on the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's breakdown of causal determinism.
The heavy hitter.
Yeah, specifically, we're looking at the 17th century rationalist framework of Baruch Spinoza.
Spinoza's our guy for this.
He is. He provides the bridge between being, a helpless gear in a machine and being the conscious engineer of your own life.
So we are deconstructing the magical thinking, finding the actual biological reality hiding underneath it, and rebuilding it into a purely practical, deterministic blueprint.
It's a lot to cover.
It is. So let's jump right into the history, because the law of attraction didn't just start with someone sitting on a beach in Bali posting vision boards on social media,
No, definitely not.
It actually has roots in a time of sheer desperation. We have to go back to the 19th century, to a man named Phineas Quimby.
And, the context of Quimby's life is crucial here. He was diagnosed with tuberculosis.
Which was bad back then.
Oh, in the mid-1800s. It wasn't just an illness. It was essentially a slow, agonizing death sentence. I mean, medicine had no cure, no antibiotics, nothing.
But Quimby didn't just accept it, right?
Right. He started riding horses. He pushed himself into these intense periods of physical and mental excitement. And he noticed that when his mind was engaged and euphoric, his physical symptoms actually receded.
Wow.
Yeah. The tuberculosis didn't magically vanish overnight, but the suffering abated. He felt better.
So he was basically observing a primitive version of the mind-body connection.
Exactly. Long before we had, the vocabulary for psychoneuroimmunology, he concluded that his physical recovery was downstream of his mental state.
And that single observation just sparked a massive paradigm shift.
It did. It led to what became the New Thought movement. He began to argue that disease was largely a matter of false reasoning and that curing the mind could cure the body.
Which, for a society terrified of incurable diseases, that must have sounded like absolute salvation.
Oh, it must have been intoxicating.
Right. And from there, the idea mutates. By the late 1880s, you have writers like Prentice Mulford. He wrote an essay called The Law of Success.
Right, and he takes Quimby's mind-body idea and kind of stretches it out into the physical world.
Yeah, he starts referring to human thought as an invisible substance.
That's where it starts to get tricky.
Yeah, he argued the mind is quite literally a magnet. Like if you charge it with certain thoughts, you draw similar circumstances toward you.
And that is the conceptual birth of like attracts like. But it really crystallizes a few years later when the language of the era catches up.
In 1906, right?
Yeah, 1906.
Yeah.
William Walker Atkinson publishes Thought Vibration, or the Law of Attraction in the Thought World.
The sources single out Atkinson's analogies, and I just find it so fascinating because he uses the cutting-edge tech of his day to explain this mystical concept.
Right, the radio.
Yeah, he compares the human brain to the Marconi wireless instrument, which was the early radio. At the time, the idea that you could speak into a box in New York and someone in London could hear it instantly via invisible waves in the air was basically witchcraft.
It was completely incomprehensible to the average person.
So Atkinson co-opts that scientific mystery.
He says, well, if invisible electromagnetic waves can carry a voice across the ocean, why can't invisible thought waves carry your desires into the universe?
Right.
He posits that the brain is a transmitter. If you tune your internal frequency to the vibration of, say, wealth, the universe, acting as a receiver and a mirror, will send wealth vibrating right back to you.
I like to think of a modern equivalent for you, the listener, to kind of grasp how this sounded to them.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It would be like a wellness guru today telling you that your pineal gland is a Wi-Fi router, and if you just punch in the right spiritual password, you can download a Ferrari straight from the cloud.
That is exactly what it's like.
It sounds ridiculous when I say it like that, but you can see why it's so seductive. It gives you ultimate control.
It does. It promises infinite agency without physical friction. That's the allure.
You don't have to do the hard stuff.
Exactly. You don't have to understand the complexities of economics or systemic inequality or, the grueling mechanics of skill acquisition. You just have to manage your internal radio dial.
But that allure is exactly what makes it so incredibly dangerous.
It is.
So let's bring it back to that bankruptcy statistic I mentioned at the top. The British Psychological Society study is just a brutal reality check.
It really is. Because they didn't just ask people if they liked being positive.
Right. They created a specific metric to measure manifestation beliefs.
They identified individuals who strongly agreed with statements like, visualizing a successful outcome causes it to be drawn closer to me.
And they categorized those people as manifestors.
Yes. And when they tracked the life outcomes of these manifestors compared to a control group, the data was alarming.
What did they find?
The manifestors were at a significantly higher risk for negative life events. Most notably, financial ruin and bankruptcy.
But why? I mean, on the surface, visualizing success seems like a good thing. Athletes do it. CEOs do it. Why does it lead to bankruptcy for these specific people?
Because of the cognitive bypass it creates.
The cognitive bypass.
Yeah. When you genuinely believe that the universe operates on a transactional basis, that your pure thoughts are the literal currency that purchases success, you stop engaging with the actual physical variables of risk.
You skip the math?
You skip the math, you skip the market research, you skip the safety nets.
That makes so much sense.
If a manifestor wants to start a business, they might pour their entire life savings into a terrible location with no foot traffic, simply because they believe their positive vibrational frequency will somehow magnetically pull customers through the door. Yeah, they mistake their internal feeling of certainty for objective external reality. They expect a cosmic reward, so they take uncalculated cosmic risks.
It's like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute because you spent 20 minutes meditating on the concept of floating.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Gravity does not care about your frequency.
No, it does not.
But that brings up a really compelling point from the sources. If this doesn't work, if it actually causes harm, like we just talked about, how do we explain the legions of wealthy, successful people who stand on stages and swear that the law of attraction is the secret to their millions?
Yes. The critique by Forrest Hansen in our sources nails this. He calls it out as a textbook case of survivorship bias, wrapped in what he calls quantum mysticism.
Survivorship bias. Let's break that down for the listener because it's a concept that distorts so much of how we view success. It's the classic World War II bomber plane example, right?
An absolute perfect example.
Right.
During the war, the military looked at the planes coming back from missions covered in bullet holes.
Right.
And the initial thought was, well, we need to put more armor where the bullet holes are.
Which makes sense on the surface.
It does. But the statistician, Abraham Wald, pointed out the logical flaw. He said, you are only looking at the planes that survived.
Right.
The planes that got hit in the engines or the cockpit, they didn't come back.
Right.
So you shouldn't armor where the holes are. You should armor where the holes aren't.
Because the ones with holes in those spots are at the bottom of the ocean.
Exactly.
So applying that to manifestation, we are only hearing from the planes that survived.
Yes.
The people on the TED stages, the influencers selling the master classes, They woke up at 4 a.m., they visualized wealth, and they got rich.
But what we aren't seeing are the tens of thousands of people who also woke up at 4 a.m., visualized wealth, took massive risks, and are now sitting in bankruptcy court.
And here is the philosophical sleight of hand that happens. The successful individuals often possess this combination of talent, immense privilege, timing, access to capital, and just sheer undeniable luck.
But humans are deeply uncomfortable with luck.
We really are. We want to believe our outcomes are earned.
Right. So the successful person retroactively attributes their privileged outcome to their own moral or spiritual virtue. They say, I am wealthy because my thoughts were pure.
Which, and this is where it gets really dark, that immediately implies something horrific about the people who aren't successful.
Yes, it does.
If pure thoughts equal wealth and health, then poverty and illness must equal impure thoughts.
The sources refer to this as the ugly flip side.
Hmm.
And you see it explicitly stated by prominent advocates of the law of attraction, even on major platforms like Oprah's network.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The doctrine dictates that the energy you put into the world is exactly what comes back to you. There are no accidents.
I can't even stomach the implications of that. Like, if you follow that logic all the way down, you have to look at a child with leukemia and conclude they somehow manifested it.
Yes.
You have to look at historical atrocities, genocides, natural disasters, and argue that the victims simply failed to maintain vibrational alignment. It's spiritual victim blaming of the highest order.
It completely strips away all systemic, biological, and physical realities just to preserve the illusion that the individual is the omnipotent center of the universe.
It's awful.
It is philosophically bankrupt and psychologically destructive.
Okay, I am tracking with all of this. The magical thinking is toxic. The victim blaming is gross. But I'm still struggling with a massive contradiction here.
Okay, what is it?
We know the radio wave magic isn't real. But we also know that visualization is a staple in high-performance psychology.
Right.
Olympic athletes visualize their routines. Surgeons visualize procedures. Are they just participating in a slightly more acceptable form of pseudoscience? Like, if there is no magic magnet, what is actually happening?
This is the pivot point of our whole discussion.
Yeah.
The high performers are not delusional. The magic is entirely fake, but the biology is incredibly real.
The biology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Visualizing success does change outcomes. But it doesn't do it by sending a signal out into the cosmos to rearrange the future. It does it by sending signals inward. It fundamentally alters your physical brain, your nervous system, and your physiology.
So the thought isn't changing the world. The thought is changing me, and then I am going out and changing the world.
Precisely. But to understand how you physically change the world, you have to understand the rules the world operates under. We have to leave the New Thought movement behind and step into the realm of classical physics and philosophical determinism.
All right, determinism. Let's wade into the deep end here.
Let's do it.
Because if the goal of this deep dive is to figure out how you can engineer a great life, we have to know what kind of machine we are operating. So what is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's definition of determinism?
So causal determinism, which is sometimes referred to as Laplacian determinism, is the philosophical and scientific position that every single event, without exception, is necessitated by antecedent events and conditions, operating in accordance with the laws of nature.
Okay, let me make sure I've got this. Every single thing that happens is just the unavoidable result of the thing that happened right before it.
Yes. There are no uncaused events.
None?
None. To conceptualize this, the French mathematician Pierre-Simon Laplace created a famous thought experiment known as Laplace's demon.
Oh, I love this concept. Let's unpack the demon for the listener.
Okay, so Laplace asks us to imagine an intellect. It could be a demon, a god, or just a supercomputer of infinite capacity.
Right.
Now imagine this intellect knows the precise location, momentum, and state of every single atom in the universe at this very nanosecond.
Every single one.
Every single one. It knows the exact position of every quark, every photon, every chemical bond. Furthermore, this intellect perfectly understands all the physical forces acting upon those particles.
That is a lot of data.
It's infinite data. And Laplace argued that for an intellect of this capacity, nothing would be uncertain.
Because it just runs the math.
Exactly. Because it knows the exact state of the present, and it knows the rigid laws of physics governing how things move. It can calculate the state of the universe 1 second from now with perfect accuracy.
And if it can calculate 1 second, it can calculate a year or a millennium.
Right. For this demon, the entire future and the entire past would be as clear as the present.
Because the future isn't some unwritten, mystical fog. It's just a mathematical continuation of the present frame.
Exactly.
It's like rendering a video game.
Uh,
If you know exactly where all the pixels are in frame 1, and you know the physics engine's code, you know exactly what frame 2 has to look like. There is no room for magic to slip in.
There's no room for magic, and
Yeah.
theoretically, there is no room for randomness. Every effect has a cause.
Okay, my brain is already starting to rebel against this.
I get that a lot.
Because the immediate assumption when you hear that the future is just mathematically locked into the past is that nothing I do matters.
Right.
Like, why should I try to eat healthy or find a better job or look for love if Laplace's demon already knows what's going to happen? Why not just lie on the couch and wait for my predetermined life to happen to me?
Because you are conflating determinism with fatalism. This is the single most common and, frankly, most dangerous misunderstanding of the concept.
Let me take a stab at separating the two, because this was a huge aha moment for me in the sources.
Go for it.
So fatalism is the idea that your ultimate destination is locked in regardless of the choices you make. It's the Greek tragedy model, right?
Yeah.
Like Oedipus. He is prophesied to kill his father. No matter what he does, whether he stays home, runs away, or hides in a cave, the universe will magically conspire to ensure that specific outcome happens. The destination is fixed, but the path violates cause and effect to get you there.
Exactly. Under fatalism, your actions are irrelevant to the outcome.
Right. But determinism is completely different. Under determinism, the destination is only reached because of your actions.
Yes.
Your choices are the actual mechanisms that create the future. Let's look at it like falling dominoes. Fatalism says the last domino is going to fall even if you pull all the middle dominoes out of the line. Determinism says the last domino only falls because the domino right behind it pushed it.
And you, your thoughts, your physical efforts, you are the dominoes.
I am the domino.
You are.
I'm not sitting outside the universe watching it happen. My choice to study for a test is the physical cause that results in the effect of passing the test. If I choose to lie on the couch, that is a physical cause that results in failing the test.
Your actions absolutely matter. In fact, they're the only things that matter in the causal chain. But, and this is where the existential dread usually sets in, we have to ask, what caused you to make the choice to study or the choice to lie on the couch?
Right. The domino pushes the next one, but what pushed me?
Prior causes. Your genetics, your childhood environment, your neurochemistry, the quality of your sleep last night, the conversation you had an hour ago. You caused the outcome, but you were caused by the past.
Wow.
Which leads us to the 17th century rationalist Baruch Spinoza and his terrifyingly beautiful argument about the illusion of free will.
Spinoza does not pull any punches.
He does not. Spinoza argued that free will, the idea that you have an uncaused, independent soul sitting inside your head making choices entirely free from physical influence, is a complete fiction.
A complete fiction.
Yes, he says it is an illusion born out of biological ignorance.
He has this analogy that I just can't stop thinking about.
The stone.
The stone. He says, imagine a stone is lying on the ground and a person comes along and throws it high into the air. Now imagine that while this stone is flying through the air, it suddenly becomes conscious. It gains human-level awareness, but it only has awareness of its current state of motion.
Right.
Spinoza points out that this stone would think to itself, I am flying. I am choosing to move through the air because I want to.
Because it is conscious of its desire to move, but completely ignorant of the arm that threw it.
It thinks its desire is the root cause. It doesn't know about the external force. And Spinoza says, humans are exactly like that flying stone.
We really are.
We are fiercely conscious of our desires. Like, I want a cup of coffee. I want to change careers. I want to yell at this person. We feel the desire so acutely that we assume we are the uncaused creators of that desire.
But we're completely blind to the millions of microscopic antecedent causes.
Yeah.
The genetics, the hormonal spikes, the cultural conditioning that threw us into the air in the first place.
Spinoza gives very grounded examples of this, doesn't he?
He does. He says the infant believes it freely desires milk. The angry child believes it freely desires revenge. The timid person believes they freely choose flight. We experience the desire, but we cannot see the vast, intricate machinery of causality that produced the desire.
I am going to push back here, or at least express my own frustration with this, because if I am just a stone flying through the air, if I am just a biological machine executing an unimaginably complex script written by physics, how is this not a completely depressing, nihilistic way to live? If my free will is an illusion, how am I supposed to engineer a better life? Why are we even doing this deep dive?
It feels restrictive until you realize that understanding the machinery is the only way to operate it.
Okay, go on.
Think about gravity. Before we understood the math of gravity, it was just a mysterious force that kept us trapped on the ground. We were victims of it. But once we understood the rigid deterministic math of gravity, we didn't defy it. We used it to calculate escape velocity. We used the restrictive law to build airplanes and rockets.
Oh, we didn't break the law of physics, we leveraged it.
Exactly. Knowing that your thoughts and actions are a part of the causal chain is exactly how you take control of your life. If you want a different outcome, you don't wish for it. You intentionally introduce new causes into your environment and your biology.
And that brings us back to the neuroscience.
It does. If we want to be better dominoes, we have to look at the physical organ that starts the chain reaction, the human brain.
So this is where we finally answer the question of what manifestation is actually doing. The magic is gone. But when someone visualizes success, they aren't sending out radio waves. They're triggering a biological cascade. And the most undeniable proof of the mind's ability to physically alter the body is the placebo effect.
The placebo effect is not just someone thinking they feel better while the disease ravages on. It is a measurable physical change in the body's chemistry initiated by belief.
Which is crazy.
It is. On average, a sugar pill, a completely inert substance, provides real relief 30% of the time. For conditions like depression, it can be effective up to 45% of the time.
The study that blew my mind in the sources was the Parkinson's research.
Oh, the sham surgeries.
Yes, they were testing a new surgical procedure. For the control group, they performed sham surgeries. They literally drilled a hole in the patient's skull, did absolutely nothing to the brain, and stitched them back up.
Unbelievable.
And these patients, believing they had received a cutting-edge treatment, saw significant improvements in their physical motor symptoms. Their tremors decreased, just because they believed the cause had been introduced.
And for decades, science observed this but struggled to map the exact physical pathway. Like, how does an abstract thought in the prefrontal cortex alleviate inflammation in the knee or reduce tremors in the hands?
Right.
But the sources highlight a monumental anatomical discovery in 2015 that helps bridge this gap: the discovery of lymphatic vessels within the brain.
I need you to break down why this is such a big deal, because I thought the brain was completely walled off.
It was long believed that the brain was immune privileged, meaning it was structurally isolated from the body's peripheral immune system by the blood-brain barrier.
Okay.
But researchers discovered a network of lymphatic vessels in the meninges, the membranes surrounding the brain. This proved there is a direct structural physical highway connecting the brain to the immune system.
So let's trace the mechanics of a manifestation practice using this. A person sits down and they aggressively visualize feeling healthy, successful, and safe. That thought is an electrical impulse.
Yes. That electrical impulse in the prefrontal cortex communicates with the limbic system, specifically areas like the amygdala and hypothalamus, which regulate emotion and stress. By intentionally generating feelings of safety and success, you reduce the production of cortisol and other stress hormones. But more than that, your brain releases neuropeptides and cytokines.
And because of these newly discovered lymphatic vessels, those chemical signals can travel directly into the immune system.
They modulate the peripheral immune response. They can downregulate systemic inflammation. So the person who spends an hour meditating on gratitude and success isn't altering the universe's frequency. They are literally bathing their own cellular architecture in anti-inflammatory signals.
Wow.
They feel better, they have more energy, and their physiological state improves.
Okay, that covers health.
Right.
But what about achieving goals? What about the person trying to manifest a successful business or a loving relationship? What is the physical mechanism there?
That comes down to neuroplasticity and goal setting. When you set a specific goal and visualize it, you activate the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for executive function, planning, and focus.
Right.
You also prime the reticular activating system, a network of neurons in the brainstem that acts as a filter for information.
The reticular activating system, that's the thing where you buy a red Honda and suddenly you see red Hondas everywhere.
Precisely. You didn't manifest more red Hondas into existence. You just reprogrammed your brain's filter to notice what was already there.
That makes total sense.
If you passionately focus on finding business opportunities, your brain stops filtering them out as background noise. You start noticing the causal pathways around you. But there is a massive caveat here, a critical difference in how you must visualize if you want this to work.
And this is where the old law of attraction gets it totally backwards.
Completely.
The old way tells you to visualize the finish line. Close your eyes and see the giant check. feel the steering wheel of the sports car, smell the ocean breeze from your mansion. But the neuroscience says that visualizing the outcome actually tricks your brain into thinking you've already achieved it. You get a premature dopamine spike, and your motivation drops.
To utilize determinism, you must visualize the process. You have to visualize the causes, not the effects.
I want to dig into the physical reality of this. If I want to run a marathon, I shouldn't visualize crossing the finish line. I should visualize waking up at 5 a.m. when it's cold and raining.
Yes.
I should visualize lacing up my shoes when I'm exhausted. I should mentally rehearse the pain and the effort. What is physically happening in my brain when I do that?
You are engaging in Hebbian learning.
Which is?
The axiom in neuroscience is neurons that fire together wire together.
Right.
When you mentally rehearse the painful process of waking up early and running, you are firing the specific motor and cognitive circuits associated with that action. Even if you are sitting still, the brain is mapping the sequence.
And what happens when I fire them repeatedly?
You stimulate glial cells in the brain to produce myelin. Myelin is a fatty substance that wraps around the axon of the neuron, essentially insulating it, much like the rubber casing around a copper wire.
Okay.
The more myelin wraps around a neural pathway, the faster and more efficiently the electrical signal travels.
It's like taking a bumpy dirt road in my brain and paving it over with smooth asphalt.
That is an excellent analogy. You are physically reducing the neurological friction required to perform the action.
Wow.
So when 5 a.m. actually rolls around and it is cold and raining, your brain doesn't have to burn massive amounts of metabolic energy forging a new path to get you out of bed. The highway is already paved.
The decision feels easier because the physical biology of your brain has been optimized for that specific cause.
Exactly.
That is incredible. The manifestation isn't magic. It's self-directed neuroplasticity. And the psychological result of this is a massive boost in self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy is your internal belief in your capacity to execute behaviors necessary to produce specific performance attainments. It is an internal locus of control.
Right.
When you strip away the magical thinking, the daily practice of visualization builds this self-efficacy. You believe you can influence your life, so you try harder, you persist longer through failure, and you take more calculated actions.
You become a more resilient domino.
I love that. Yes.
So we have the biology of the brain, we have the physics of cause and effect. Now, we need the philosophical operating system to run this machinery.
Back to Spinoza.
Right. How does Spinoza tell us to live in a world where we are just incredibly complex dominoes?
Spinoza's masterwork, The Ethics, is essentially a survival guide for a clockwork universe. And to understand it, we have to start with his foundational concept of human nature, the conatus.
The conatus, the striving.
Yes. For Spinoza, the conatus is the essential defining characteristic of every living thing. It is the fundamental biological and psychological drive to persevere in your own being.
Like biological inertia.
Exactly. You naturally strive to survive, to maintain your structure, and most importantly, to increase your power of acting in the world.
And he ties this directly to our emotions, right? He strips emotion down to just two primary states.
Joy and sadness.
Okay.
For Spinoza, joy is not just a fleeting happy feeling. Joy is the physical and mental experience of your power increasing. It is the feeling of transitioning to a state of greater perfection and capability.
So what is sadness?
Sadness, conversely, is the experience of your power decreasing, of being hindered or weakened by external forces.
Got it.
Every other emotion you feel, love, hate, envy, hope, fear, is just a complex variation of your conatus experiencing joy or sadness in relation to an external object.
But wait, if the entire goal of my existence is to experience joy, an increase in power, and avoid sadness, a decrease in power, how do I do that if everything is predetermined?
Spinoza gives us the answer by dividing human experience into two categories, passions and actions.
I really want to spend some time here because this shifted my entire perspective.
It is the fulcrum of his philosophy. Let's start with passions. When you are driven by inadequate, confused ideas, when you react blindly to your environment, when you lash out in anger because you are tired, when you chase a superficial pleasure because of a biological urge you don't understand, you are suffering from passions.
The word passion literally shares a root with passive. I am not doing something. Something is being done to me.
You are being acted upon. You are a passive effect of external causes. The environment, other people, and your unexamined biology are knocking you around like a pinball.
That sounds exhausting.
In this state, You are entirely a slave. Your power is constantly fluctuating based on the whims of the universe.
So how do I stop being passive? How do I transition to taking actions?
By using reason. When you use your intellect to form adequate, clear, and distinct ideas about the world, you understand the causal chain. You understand why things are happening, including your own behavior.
Okay.
When you understand the causes, you stop being a passive effect. You become the adequate cause of your own reality. You begin to act from your own internal rational nature rather than reacting to external pressure.
This redefines freedom entirely. For Spinoza, freedom isn't some magical ability to defy physics. Freedom is simply acting out of necessity from your own internal logic rather than being forced by external logic.
Exactly.
You are still a gear in the machine, but you are turning under your own power.
Which leads to Spinoza's ultimate psychological hack. He provides a specific, executable remedy for suffering. He writes in the Ethics, an emotion, which is a passion, ceases to be a passion as soon as we form a clear and distinct idea thereof.
That sentence is worth the price of admission for this whole deep dive.
It really is.
The moment you truly understand a negative emotion, it stops controlling you. Let's make this highly practical for you, the listener. I want to use the classic example of road rage.
A perfect scenario of competing causal chains.
Right. You are driving home, you had a long day, and suddenly a car violently swerves into your lane, cutting you off. You have to slam on the brakes. Instantly, you feel a massive spike of anger. Your heart rate skyrockets. You want to honk, you want to yell. Under Spinoza's framework, what is happening to you in that exact second?
You are suffering a passion. An external force, the other driver, has acted upon you. They have suddenly decreased your power, restricted your movement, and caused a transition toward sadness.
Okay.
Because your understanding of the event is confused and inadequate. You just see a bad person doing a bad thing to you.
Yeah.
You're reacting passively. You are being controlled by the other driver's actions.
But the second I engage my reason, I can deploy Spinoza's remedy.
Right.
I take a breath, and I force myself to analyze the causal chain. I look at that driver and I think, okay, why did they do that? They are not an uncaused demon who woke up choosing to ruin my day. They are a complex web of dominoes, just like me.
Exactly.
Maybe they are terrified because they're late for a flight. Maybe they're a newly licensed teenager who misjudged the distance. Maybe they have a screaming toddler in the back seat causing immense biological stress.
You are forming a clear and distinct idea of the event. You are viewing it through the lens of determinism.
And the most incredible thing happens when I do that. The anger actually evaporates. It physically dissolves because I stop seeing an evil attack directed at my ego. And I just see a biological machine responding to its own chaotic causes. The passion ceases to be a passion. I regain my power. I transition from passivity to activity.
This transition is what Spinoza calls becoming the free man.
The free man.
The free man understands the necessity of nature. He does not take the universe personally. And because he understands that everyone is acting according to their own determined, often painful causes, he fundamentally changes how he interacts with humanity.
How so?
The free man does not respond to hate with more hate, because that just introduces more chaotic, destructive causes into the system.
He repays hate with love.
He repays hate with love, and with a quality Spinoza calls generositas, which roughly translates to strength of character or nobility.
Wow.
The free man realizes, through pure logic, that living in rational harmony with other human beings is the ultimate causal advantage. The best way to increase your own power and joy is to help others increase theirs, thereby creating an environment of mutual benefit.
It is the most beautiful, logical argument for radical empathy I have ever heard. It's not about being a martyr. It's just the most efficient way to run the machine.
That's a great way to summarize it.
So we have deconstructed the magic. We have the physics, the neuroscience, and the philosophy. Now we are going to synthesize all of this into the specific request the listener made. We are going to build the actionable blueprint for the deterministic law of attraction.
To do this, we require a total paradigm shift.
Okay, lay it on us.
You have to abandon the old new thought mantra. You drop the belief that the universe gives me what I think. You replace it with a structurally sound, scientifically valid mantra. The future inherits what I repeatedly cause.
I want you, the listener, to really internalize that. The future inherits what I repeatedly cause. You are no longer a beggar at a wishing well. You are an engineer in a control room.
Yes.
Based on all our sources, we have distilled this down into 6 daily operational principles. Let's weave through them.
The first principle is the most foundational. You must become the first domino.
The first domino.
If you are unhappy with your life, you cannot just sit and visualize the last domino falling. You cannot visualize the promotion or the healthy body or the perfect partner without initiating the physical sequence required to produce them.
You have to look at your current trajectory with brutal honesty. The math of determinism is unforgiving.
It really is.
I have to ask myself, if my exact habits today, what I eat, how much I sleep, how I speak to my partner, how I spend my money, if these exact causes repeat every day for the next 10 years, what is the mathematically guaranteed effect?
Exactly. If you are eating junk food and avoiding difficult conversations, the future is already locked in as illness and loneliness.
The only way to change the effect is to physically intervene and change the cause today.
Which brings us to the second principle, which addresses the anxiety of uncertainty. Think like a statistician.
Think like a statistician.
Remember, you are not Laplace's demon. You do not possess infinite knowledge of every variable. You cannot guarantee any outcome with absolute certainty. You could eat perfectly and still get sick. You could work tirelessly and still fail.
Which is where people usually give up. They say, well, if there are no guarantees, why try?
Because while you cannot control certainty, you can absolutely control probability. That is what a statistician does. They don't predict the future perfectly. They stack the odds.
Exactly. Reading a book about finance doesn't guarantee wealth, but it shifts the probability matrix. Going to the gym doesn't guarantee immortality, but it drastically reduces the probability of metabolic disease.
You are essentially loading the dice of your own life.
You're organizing your causal network so that a positive outcome becomes the path of least resistance rather than a statistical miracle.
To effectively load the dice, you must employ the third principle, reduce entropy.
Reduce entropy.
In physics, entropy is the measure of disorder, randomness, or chaos within a closed system. The second law of thermodynamics states that systems naturally move toward higher entropy. Things naturally degrade and become messier unless energy is applied to maintain order.
How does that apply to my daily life, though?
Your biological life, your finances, your relationships, they are all systems. If you allow entropy to increase, you are introducing chaos into your causal chain. A chaotic system produces unpredictable, usually negative effects.
I think of this like trying to cook a gourmet meal in a kitchen that hasn't been cleaned in a month.
That's a perfect image.
You are trying to create this beautiful effect, the meal, but you are constantly bumping into trash, you can't find the right pan, the knives are dull, the friction is enormous. This is why advice like clean your room or organize your inbox is actually profound deterministic advice.
It is about reducing the friction in your life. If you automate your savings, prep your meals, and keep your living space orderly, you are actively removing negative variables from your environment.
You are preventing bad causal chains from starting accidentally.
Yes, you don't get hit with a late fee because you couldn't find the bill under a pile of mail. You smooth out the gears of your daily machine, allowing your energy to flow toward your actual goals instead of constantly putting out fires.
The fourth principle leans heavily on Spinoza. You must stop fighting reality. Radical acceptance.
We expend a massive amount of cognitive and emotional energy ruminating on the past. I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I hadn't taken that job. I wish the market hadn't crashed.
Right.
Under the laws of determinism, the past is mathematically immutable. It happened because an infinite chain of prior causes necessitated that it happened exactly that way.
Wishing the past was different is literally arguing with physics. It is the definition of suffering. You are generating a passion that decreases your power and it produces zero forward momentum.
When you fail, or when tragedy strikes, the deterministic approach is to accept the reality of the new effect immediately. The faster you accept that the board has changed, the faster you can start laying down new causes to navigate the new reality.
Acceptance shortens the recovery time between a negative effect and your next positive cause.
It does. Which leads to the fifth principle, acknowledging that you are not acting in a vacuum. Choose environments carefully.
We talked about how you are a domino pushing other dominoes, but you are also constantly being pushed. Your environment is a massive collection of hidden causes.
You are a biological organism that adapts to stimuli. Your peer group, the media you consume, the lighting in your office, the algorithmic feed on your phone, these are all physical causes acting upon your neurology.
So willpower isn't enough.
If you want to change your life, willpower is often insufficient because willpower is easily depleted. You must curate your environment so that the default causes push you in the desired direction.
If I want to be healthy, I can't rely on willpower while keeping a pantry full of junk food. The junk food is a cause waiting to happen. I
Yes.
have to change the environment so that eating an apple is the path of least resistance. If I want to be happier, I have to stop doom scrolling rage bait on social media because that content is physically causing stress hormones to flood my body.
You have to ruthlessly audit what you allow into your physical and mental space.
And the final principle is the ultimate mechanism of growth. Feed your future self through the power of compounding.
In a deterministic universe, small causes do not merely add up, they multiply over time.
This is about expanding your time horizon, thinking in decades instead of days. If I improve a skill by just 1% today, the cause seems negligible.
But if you repeat that cause daily, the compounding effect over 10 years alters the entire trajectory of your life.
You must view your identity not as a static, finished product, but as an ongoing biological project. Every action you take today is the raw material you are feeding to the person who will wake up in your body tomorrow, next month, and a decade from now.
I have to ask myself, am I feeding my future self health, knowledge, and financial security? Or am I feeding them debt, inflammation, and regret?
To operationalize this entire framework, the blueprint provides a very simple, grounding daily practice mail. It requires you to audit your causal output twice a day.
Every morning, you look in the mirror and ask, what future am I currently causing?
And every evening before you go to sleep, you review your day and ask, what did today's actions make more likely?
It is a shift from passive wishing to active engineering.
I find this perspective incredibly empowering. It strips away the anxiety of hoping the universe favors me today. You aren't closing your eyes and crossing your fingers. You're looking at the raw, mechanical reality of the universe, pointing at the gears and saying, I understand the math, I know how the machine works, and I'm going to put my hands on these gears and turn them myself.
It is a mature, intellectually rigorous form of empowerment.
It really is.
To synthesize our journey today, we started with the listener's prompt and completely dismantled the pseudoscience and the toxic victim blaming of the traditional law of attraction.
Yes, we did.
We embraced the rigid, yet mathematically beautiful reality of causal determinism. We rewired our understanding of how thoughts physically alter the body via lymphatic vessels and myelination, prioritizing process over outcome. And we adopted Spinoza's vision of rational freedom to build a life of compounding positive causes.
I want to point out something incredible right now. By choosing to submit this specific question to us, and by choosing to listen to this deep dive for the last hour, you, the listener, have already inserted a massive new cause into your timeline.
That's right.
The knowledge from these sources, the mechanics of your brain, Spinoza's philosophy, the statistical blueprint, that information is now physically encoded in your neural architecture. It is a brand new domino in your brain, and it is mathematically destined to alter your next decision, your next habit, and ultimately your trajectory.
You are already a different cause than you were an hour ago. And as we leave you to go about the rest of your day, I want you to consider one final provocative thought.
Okay, let's hear it.
If determinism teaches us that your current environment is perfectly designed to cause your present reality, I want you to physically look around the room you are in right this second. Look at the objects around you. What subtle, invisible causes, a book gathering dust on a shelf, a specific notification chiming on your phone, a small habit you do in this room without even noticing, are secretly determining who you will be a decade from now. What will be your next domino?
The machine is ticking. The gears are turning. Are you going to be the one turning them? Thanks for diving deep with us.